Amy Slaton's life had never unfolded quietly. Even before she stepped into the bright, hot glow of reality television, before her name became inseparable from the cultural phenomenon of 1,000-pound sisters, she had carried a kind of gravity with her, a weight of dreams, fears, family history, and the longing to belong somewhere gentle, somewhere safe, somewhere where love did not leave so quickly. For years, Amy and her sister Tammy had lived online, their YouTube videos capturing ordinary slices of life that resonated with thousands. They never imagined that these humble beginnings would one day lead them to a national audience, to a series that showed their most fragile and triumphant moments. But fame, Amy learned, was a double-edged blade. It lifted her into opportunities she never thought possible, but it also exposed her wounds to the world's relentless gaze. Still, through everything, the surgeries, the struggles, the heartbreaks, Amy had always held on to one dream with fierce devotion, becoming a mother. And when Gage arrived, and then Glenn, she felt like her life had finally begun to shimmer with purpose. Her marriage to Michael Halterman, once a glimmer of hope, had eventually cracked under the pressures of parenthood and mismatched expectations. While Amy grew, Michael seemed to shrink back, leaving more and more weight on her shoulders. People whispered that he hadn't stepped up, that he hadn't taken fatherhood as seriously as she needed. And maybe that was true. Maybe it wasn't. What mattered was that Amy knew she was fighting for her sons with everything she had. Every breath, every hour of lost sleep, every tear that slipped down her face in the quiet of the night. When she finally filed for divorce, she felt a strange mixture of relief and fear. Relief that she no longer had to carry the dead weight of a partnership that no longer served her. Fear because she was suddenly alone, staring down a new life without the safety net of a steady, predictable routine. But she pushed forward, because mothers don't get to crumble, not when their children need them. Life, however, has a way of striking when you're trying hardest to stand. The camel bite incident, absurd, surreal, and all too real, became a catalyst for a storm that Amy never saw coming. What should have been an unfortunate accident spiraled into law enforcement involvement, accusations, and a moment that would haunt her long after the bruises faded. And when she and her new boyfriend, Brian, were detained months later on charges tied to alleged drug possession and child endangerment, the entire world felt like it had tilted off its axis. In that moment, as the walls of uncertainty closed in around her, Amy faced her greatest fear: losing her children. Temporary custody was given to Amanda Halterman, her sharp-tongued, fiercely loyal sister who had never sugar-coated her opinions. Amanda loved those boys, but she also loved hard truths, and she feared that Amy was slipping into dangerous patterns, trusting too quickly, falling too fast for a man with a past she didn't fully understand. The world watched, and the speculation was merciless. Comment sections turned into battlegrounds. Pundits, fans, and strangers alike analyzed her every decision. Was she stable? Responsible? Was she sabotaging her own future? Amy's social media went silent for a time, as if she were retreating into herself, pulling back her heart to protect it from the public's claws. But even in the stillness, she was fighting to prove that she was not the reckless caricature people painted her to be, fighting for the two small boys who needed her, fighting for her own redemption. And then, like a breath after drowning, May 2025 brought the clarity she'd been praying for. Amy announced that she had not, in fact, lost custody of Gage and Glenn. The boys had been returned to her, restored to the safe circle of her arms. Her Mother's Day post, 2 giggling boys and a plate of ham and cheese breakfast, felt like a quiet victory, a whispered promise that she was still here, still trying, still loving with a heart too big to fail. But victories, Amy knew, did not silence the echoes of doubt. Brian's past shadowed her like a stubborn cloud. Even her own family questioned her decisions. How could she move so fast, meet, fall in love, get engaged within 5 months? Why trust a man with uncertain roots when her sons were so vulnerable? Yet when Amy spoke about Brian, there was softness in her eyes. She saw things in him that others didn't: gentleness, loyalty, and eagerness to be part of her world. He wasn't perfect, but neither was she. And maybe that was why she felt drawn to him. In her mind, love didn't have to be flawless to be real. Her new life unfolded like pages from a gothic fairy tale, a Halloween engagement, pink hair dyed by request, a Victorian updo, a haunted wedding venue that whispered with old stories. Standing in her sleeveless lace gown, wearing a black tiara that caught the flickering candlelight, Amy felt transformed, not into a princess, but into a survivor who had finally chosen her own ending. When Brian looked at her, his eyes soft behind the sharp edges of his tuxedo, Amy felt seen. Truly seen. This wasn't just a romance, it was a refuge. He had proposed to her inside a haunted house, the air thick with theatrical fog and distant screams. It was chaotic, absurd, uniquely her. She remembered the moment he dropped to one knee, the way time slowed around her as he held out a ring shaped like intertwined skulls, a symbol that love could bloom even from the darkest corners of life. "I know we both said we'd never do this again," Brian had whispered, hands trembling, "but my love for you is insane. Will you marry me?" And Amy, with a laugh that cracked open the quiet ache she had carried for years, simply said, "You know I will." Their happiness seemed defiant, rebellion against every voice that had told her she wasn't enough, that she couldn't rebuild her life, that she would fail as a mother, as a partner, as a woman. But Amy didn't crumble, not then, not ever. Her decisions, sometimes messy, sometimes impulsive, were guided by the same compass she had followed for years. Love for her sons, and the hope for a life where she didn't have to face the world alone. That was why she introduced tennis to her boys, picking up a Head Instinct 21-inch racket, posting it proudly with a caption that seemed simple but carried the weight of a mother trying to rebuild normalcy. "Hope the rain clear up soon." To the world, it was a casual post. But to Amy, it was a statement. "I am here. I am trying. I am showing up." Her followers noticed. Supportive comments trickled in, like small lights scattered across a dark shoreline. "Continue being a good mom. Seek help when you need it," one user wrote. Advice, compassion, encouragement, it all wrapped around her like a quilt. For the first time in a long time, Amy felt the warmth of hope on her skin. Because motherhood wasn't about perfection. It was about trying again and again, even when the world said she couldn't. And Amy was ready to try. For her boys. For her future. For the chance to finally live a life she didn't have to apologize for. Amy's world had become a strange tapestry of contradictions, shadows and light braided together, hope flickering in the same breath as fear. Even as she tried to rebuild her life, the weight of past mistakes lingered like smoke that refused to clear. But Amy, in her own stubborn, heartfelt way, pushed forward, driven by a love so fierce it could have cracked mountains. In the weeks after her Mother's Day post, she found herself waking up earlier, moving quieter, listening more closely to the rhythms of her children. There are things only a mother hears. Tiny shifts in breathing, soft whimpers, the rustle of a blanket that meant one child was cold, or the faint, sleepy giggle that meant they were dreaming of something sweet. Amy held on to these moments like warm stones in her palms, grounding herself in what mattered most. Gage, with his wide, curious eyes, had his father's calmness, but none of his disinterest. Glenn, younger but wilder, had inherited her spark, the kind of spark that could set a room alight with laughter or chaos depending on the day. Together, they made her home feel like a place where life was still possible, where second chances bloomed like stubborn weeds pushing through cracks in the pavement. And so Amy tried. She tried harder than she ever had. Every morning, she lined up tiny shoes by the door, some days on the wrong feet, and some days kicked off entirely before they ever made it outside. She poured cereal into mismatched bowls, wiped sticky faces, negotiated with toddlers like a diplomat who had seen too much. Her life wasn't polished, and it wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it was hers. Still, tension simmered beneath the surface. The custody scare had shaken her deeper than she admitted. Nights were the hardest. When the boys were asleep and the world grew quiet, Amy would lie awake, replaying every mistake with brutal clarity. The accusations, the arrest, the way people had looked at her, like she was irresponsible, reckless, unfit. She wondered if her love alone was strong enough to outweigh those fears. But each morning the boys needed her again, pulling her back into the world with tiny hands and sleepy voices. Mommy snack? Mommy wear shoes? Mommy look. And each morning she rose. Because mothers don't stay down for long. Meanwhile, life with Brian had become a whirlwind of its own. Their relationship had unfolded quickly, yes, but in Amy's heart, it didn't feel rushed. It felt inevitable, like they had collided at precisely the right moment, both worn out from disappointment, both yearning for something soft and strong enough to trust. Brian had a past, a complicated one. People whispered. People judged. And Amy, who had spent years being judged herself, knew how unfair and devastating that could feel. She understood brokenness. She understood healing. She understood the hunger to be loved without conditions. To her, Brian wasn't just a man with mistakes. He was a man trying to grow beyond them. He was the person who made the boys laugh until their little bellies shook. The one who stayed up late assembling toys that came with instructions clearly written by a sadist. The one who handed Amy a cup of tea just the way she liked it, without her asking, because he remembered everything she said, even the things she didn't think were important. He made her feel chosen. Not settled for. Not tolerated. Chosen. But her family didn't see it that way. Tammy, now stable after her own long, grueling journey, was cautious. She knew how men could slip in and out of Amy's life like shadows. She didn't want to see her sister hurt, used, or misled again. Amanda was more vocal, her protective instincts sharp as arrows. Amy, you don't even know him, she had argued once, hands on her hips, eyebrows drawn tight. You can't trust someone around your kids just because they tell you what you want to hear. But Amy had stood her ground. She wasn't the timid, easily swayed woman she once was. She had lived enough heartbreak to know when something felt different. And Brian felt different. Still, she understood their concerns. She even respected them. But she also knew that love doesn't always wait for permission. Sometimes it arrives messy, unexpected, and impossible to ignore. As fall crept closer, the wedding planning chilled the air with excitement and tension alike. Amy had always been drawn to things that were a little strange, a little whimsical, a little dark around the edges. Halloween was her favorite holiday, not for the costumes or the candy, but for the feeling of transformation, the sense that anyone could become something else, something braver, something freer, even if only for a night. Choosing a haunted venue wasn't a stunt. It was her dream. A dream she had held quietly through the years, tucked beneath the louder dreams of motherhood and weight loss and survival. The venue, Cuckie's Talbot in Bardstown, stood like a relic from another time, with creaking floors, tall windows, and chandeliers that looked as though they whispered secrets in the dark. People said it was haunted, but Amy didn't care. If anything, she rather liked the idea. A place with history. A place with character. A place where even ghosts lingered because they didn't want to leave. On her wedding day, she stood before a mirror in her lace gown, fingers trembling as she adjusted the black tiara resting against her pink hair. Brian had wanted the pink. It was the kind of outlandish detail that made him laugh with pure joy, and Amy had agreed because she loved making him happy. Her hair glowed like a rose dipped in twilight, soft but defiant. She took a deep breath. She wasn't the same woman who had married Michael. She wasn't the same woman who had cried alone in the bathroom, who had fought to catch her breath under pressures no one else understood. Today she was someone new. Someone reborn. Tammy buttoned up the back of her dress with steady hands. The sisters didn't need many words. Years of shared pain and triumph had built a quiet language between them. Tammy simply looked at her and nodded, her eyes saying what her voice didn't have to. You deserve this. The boys, dressed in tiny suits, kept tugging at their collars, already impatient. Glenn tripped twice. Gage carried a plastic pumpkin he refused to put down. Amy laughed softly. Even if everything went wrong today, this moment, this sweetness, was enough. As the ceremony began, shadows danced along the walls from flickering candles, filling the room with an eerie beauty that suited Amy perfectly. The air hummed with anticipation. Brian stood at the altar in his tailored tuxedo, eyes softening the moment he saw her. He looked nervous and proud and utterly in love. And Amy felt her breath hitch. This was it. Not just a wedding. Not a show. Not a storyline for viewers to dissect. This was her choosing herself. Her choosing hope. Her choosing a future where she was no longer second-guessing every step she took. When she reached Brian, his voice cracked as he whispered, "You look perfect." The ceremony unfolded like a dream carved out of shadow and candlelight. A kiss sealed their vows, and for a fleeting moment, the world felt gentle. But reality, Amy knew, always waited outside. After the wedding, life settled into a strange, unpredictable rhythm. There were good days, days where laughter filled every corner of the house, and everything felt easy. And there were hard days, days where the weight of public opinion pressed down on her like a storm cloud. People still talked. People still judged. Every post she made was scrutinized. Every move dissected. Every decision debated as though her life were a public court case. But Amy refused to shrink. She began taking the boys outside more. Parks, playdates, evening walks, simple adventures that grounded her in motherhood again. The tennis outing was one of those small but meaningful acts. She bought the tiny racket, posted it with hope in her heart, not thinking about how the world might twist it. She simply wanted to be a good mom. A mom who laughed with her sons. A mom who introduced them to exercise, to fresh air, to life beyond screens and chaos. A mom who tried. When she saw the supportive comments on her Instagram post, her eyes softened. She didn't expect praise, but she was grateful. Because being a mother under a microscope was exhausting. Being judged while trying her best was overwhelming. Yet here she was, still fighting for her place, still carving out a future for her boys, still proving that a woman can fall, break, regroup, and rise again with more strength than anyone could imagine. Because Amy Slaton had never been delicate. She had been forged by pain. And she was still standing, still loving, still trying, still choosing a life worth living. The weeks after the wedding felt like a slow exhale, gentle, fragile, and strangely new. Amy walked through her house with a lighter step, her lace gown packed away, but not forgotten, the black tiara wrapped carefully in tissue paper. For once, she felt like her life wasn't defined by crisis. She felt married. Not just in the legal sense, but in the emotional one, where someone's presence settled into the corners of your reality and filled the quiet spaces you didn't realize were empty. Brian was different from Michael in ways that were immediately obvious, and in ways that were quietly profound. Where Michael had withdrawn into silence and routine, Brian leaned in, asking questions, offering help, folding laundry badly but earnestly. He wasn't perfect. He made mistakes. He got overwhelmed. But he showed up. And to Amy, that mattered more than anything. Still, even as her heart swelled with hope, life had not forgotten how to test her. The custody scare had left cracks inside her she was still learning to patch. Every time her phone buzzed unexpectedly, she felt a jolt of dread in her stomach. Every time the boys played too quietly, she rushed to check on them, afraid something was wrong. Trauma doesn't fade just because life gets better. It lingers, reminding you of the worst days even when you're living through the best ones. And there was the public, the endless crowd watching from behind screens, some cheering, some waiting for her to stumble. Amy felt their gaze like a weight on her skin, even in moments that should have belonged only to her family. But motherhood had taught her resilience. It had taught her that fear was just another part of love, that showing up even when you're scared was what made you a parent worth admiring. So Amy lived her days with intention, even on the ones when exhaustion clung to her like a second skin. One afternoon, the house hummed with warm, domestic noise, cartoons droning in the background, the clatter of dishes in the sink, scattered toys underfoot. Amy sat cross-legged on the living room carpet, trying to teach Gage how to hold his new tennis racket properly. "Like this, baby," she said, guiding his small hands. Gage, determined but slightly confused, swung with all the enthusiasm of a child who believed every movement was a triumph. The ball flew sideways and smacked the couch hard enough to make Glenn giggle. Brian looked up from assembling a new bookshelf, the kind that came with too many parts and labeled screws that always seemed to roll away, and grinned. "He's gonna be a pro," he said, wiping sawdust from his fingers. Amy rolled her eyes playfully. "At breaking furniture, maybe." But the warmth of the moment seeped deep into her bones. It was these small, ordinary flashes of life that anchored her. The chaos,
the joy,
the imperfect but genuine love she felt filling the room. Sometimes she wondered if people watching the show understood this side of her. The version of Amy who woke up early to pack toddler snacks, who carried extra wipes in her purse, who planned outings even when she felt too tired to move, who stayed up late worrying if she was doing enough. Reality TV captured drama, but it rarely captured the quiet heroism of motherhood. Her family, however, still had their concerns. The wedding hadn't magically erased their doubts about Brian. Love in their eyes wasn't protection, it was vulnerability. One evening, Amanda stopped by unannounced, carrying a casserole dish like a warning disguised as kindness. "Amy, we need to talk," she said, setting the dish on the counter. Amy's stomach tightened. She knew that tone too well, the tone of a sister who loved fiercely enough to be brutally honest. "What now?" she asked softly, bracing herself. "Don't be like that," Amanda said, crossing her arms. "I'm not here to fight. I'm here because I love you. Because I love those boys." Amy stayed quiet. Amanda sighed, her expression melting into something gentler. "You know people are still talking about that arrest. About Brian's past. They're saying you're letting history repeat itself." Amy swallowed hard. The words felt like sandpaper. "Do you think I don't know that? Do you think I don't think about it every single day?" She replied, voice trembling. Amanda stepped closer. "I know you're trying, Amy. God knows you are. But trying doesn't always protect your kids. And I want them safe. I want you safe." The silence stretched between them. Then Amy whispered, "I love him." Amanda's shoulders softened. "I know you do." They hugged, and in that embrace, the fear, the love, the worry, the hope, everything intertwined. Family wasn't simple, but it was real. Still, the internet didn't care about nuance. Every time Amy posted a picture, the comments split like a fault line. Half the people cheered her on. The other half tore into her decisions with the ferocity of people who forgot they were talking about a human being. One night, after the boys were asleep, Amy sat on the couch scrolling through her notifications. Some messages made her smile. Others twisted her insides. Then she saw one comment that stopped her cold. "Why are you letting another man raise your kids? Didn't you learn?" Her eyes stung. She locked her phone and pressed it to her chest like it might break in her hands. Brian found her there moments later, tears clinging stubbornly to her lashes. "Ames," he whispered, kneeling beside her. "Talk to me." She looked at him, really looked at him. A man with flaws, mistakes, and a heart that beat stubbornly in sync with hers. "People think I'm a bad mom," she said, voice cracking. Brian shook his head immediately.
"No.
They don't know you. They know what they think they see on the internet. But I see you. Every day. You're a damn good mom." His certainty wrapped around her like a blanket. For a moment, the world's noise faded. But parenting wasn't just about love. It was about decisions. Hard ones. Amy knew she had to be smarter now. More careful. More deliberate. Her children depended on her strength, not her spontaneity. So she started therapy again, quietly, without an announcement or a hashtag. She scheduled her appointments in the mornings when the boys were at daycare, walking into the office with a determination that felt like armor. She talked about guilt. She talked about fear. She talked about love and mistakes and the pressure of raising two boys in the public eye. And in those sessions, something inside her began to heal, not quickly, not dramatically, but steadily. Healing, she learned, wasn't the breakthrough moment. It was a slow, quiet process. A choice made again and again. 2 weeks later, she decided to do something bold, something that terrified her but also felt necessary. She filmed a short video. Sitting on her porch, hair tied back, no filter, no makeup, just her face and her truth. "I know I haven't always made the right choices," she said softly, looking directly into the camera. "But I love my boys more than anything in this world. And I'm trying every day to be better, to be stronger, to give them the life they deserve." She paused. "And I hope people can see that, because I'm not giving up on them. Ever." She posted it without rewatching it. The comments, surprisingly, were filled mostly with love. Messages from mothers who understood. Messages from people who had followed her journey from the beginning. Messages from women who admired her honesty. For the first time in a long time, Amy felt seen. Not as a character on a show, not as a tabloid headline, but as a mother trying her best in a complicated world. Life continued, messy, loud, real. There were early mornings where she burned the toast. Afternoons where the boys refused naps and screamed for no reason. Evenings where she and Brian argued over stupid things like dishes or bedtime routines. But there were also moments that stitched her heart together again. Gage falling asleep against her shoulder, Glenn handing her a dandelion with a proud grin, Brian pulling her into a hug from behind while she cooked dinner. These pieces, fragile but beautiful, formed the mosaic of a life she was learning to treasure. Because Amy Slaton wasn't just surviving anymore. She was rebuilding. Slowly, bravely, deliberately. And the world, whether it believed in her or not, would someday see her strength. Because Amy was no longer the woman who doubted her worth. She was a mother rising, a woman becoming, a soul refusing to break. Amy had always imagined the day she would finally feel free again, a day when her home would be filled with laughter instead of whispers, stability instead of fear, and a sense of safety for her boys above all else. But she never expected that the turning point would arrive under flashing police lights, with a cold echo of sirens brushing against her skin. It happened on a warm September night in 2024, one of those evenings when the Kentucky air felt heavy and restless. Amy and Brian had gone out earlier, the kids spending time with the family. What should have been an ordinary evening spiraled into chaos, the kind that can shatter a reputation in seconds. A misunderstanding turned into an accusation turned into an arrest, and suddenly, Amy's world flipped upside down. Her name hit headlines before her phone call was even made. Police reports, mugshots, speculation. Words like illegal possession, child endangerment, and custody risks splashed across social media, tearing through the TLC fanbase like wildfire. For the first time in years, Amy wasn't fighting a scale or a failing marriage. She was fighting for her children. Her sister Amanda stepped in immediately, tough, practical, and protective as always. She took Gage and Glenn into temporary custody while Amy sat in a holding cell, her heart sinking lower with every passing minute. The silence was suffocating. All she could think about was whether her boys were scared, whether they were asking for her, whether this one mistake, this one terrible night, would cost her everything she loved. For days afterward, the internet drowned in speculation. Did Amy lose her kids for good? Is this the end of her parenting storyline? Is Brian the reason her life is falling apart again? And while the world outside debated, judged, tore her apart, Amy did something she had always done in the hardest moments of her life. She fought back quietly, steadily, and with her whole heart. When May 2025 arrived, Amy finally spoke out, her voice calmer and firmer than anyone expected. She wanted the world to hear one thing above all else. She never lost custody of her sons. She revealed that the boys had been returned to her care, safe and healthy. And to prove it, she spent Mother's Day exactly the way she had dreamed during those dark months, sitting in a small diner, smiling at the sight of Gage and Glenn devouring ham and cheese sandwiches as if the world outside no longer mattered. It was a moment so small yet so powerful that it silenced critics in a way no press statement ever could. Still, Doubt lingered among fans, especially when it came to Brian. Why had she let him so close to her children so quickly? Why had she gotten engaged just 5 months after meeting him? And most of all, could she really trust him? Her family had their concerns, and loudly so. Tammy, Misty, and Amanda all questioned the speed of the relationship and the shadows in Brian's past. But Amy didn't want to live in fear anymore. She didn't want her boys to grow up watching their mother be afraid to take chances, or afraid to love. So she made a choice, not for the cameras, not for fans, not even for Brian. She made it for Gage and Glenn. Every morning that she woke up and watched them run down the hallway laughing, every afternoon that she picked up their toys, every night she tucked them into bed, she reminded herself that motherhood had been her greatest dream, long before the show, the fame, the chaos. Her boys were the reason she lost weight in the first place. They were the reason she kept fighting. This time, she wasn't trying to prove anything to the world. She was proving it to herself. And as the months passed, her life slowly began to bloom again, small, simple steps toward stability. Buying tennis rackets for the boys. Taking them outside, instead of keeping them glued to screens. Posting updates not for sympathy, but to show growth. To show effort. To show love. She knew people mocked her parenting online. She knew every decision she made became a debate. But instead of hiding, she took the criticism in stride and kept going. Because Amy Slaton was no longer the frightened, unsure version of herself viewers once saw in season 1. She was a mother rebuilding her life, one choice at a time. She was a woman learning to trust again. She was someone who had stumbled, fallen hard, but gotten up with more strength than anyone expected. And in the background of this difficult chapter, love began quietly weaving its way back into her world, not in grand gestures, but in small, steady moments with Brian. Moments that would lead them toward a future neither of them expected. A future that would soon take shape in the most unusual, unforgettable way. By the time spring returned to Kentucky in 2025, Amy Slaton had survived one of the hardest years of her life. She was still bruised, still healing, but no longer broken. And standing quietly beside her through it all, patient, steady, and unexpectedly gentle, was Brian Scott Laverne. Their relationship hadn't begun with fireworks or dramatic declarations. It began with two people who had been damaged by life, standing side by side, trying to figure out if they deserved happiness again. Amy had every reason to keep her guard up. Brian had every reason to think she wouldn't trust him. But somehow, the two found a strange comfort in each other's company, like two survivors recognizing the same scars. As the months went on, Amy began seeing something in Brian that she hadn't expected. Effort. He wasn't perfect, nobody is, but he tried. He tried to earn her family's trust. He tried to bond with Gage and Glenn without forcing anything. He tried to support her sobriety, her healing, her motherhood. And slowly, very slowly, Amy's heart began to thaw. The turning point came in May, when the couple visited a haunted attraction in Kentucky with Tammy and Misty. Amy never expected anything special to happen there. It was just another family outing, filled with nervous laughter, fog machines, and the familiar screams of actors jumping out from the dark. But halfway through the haunted house, as the group walked through an eerie corridor lit by flickering lanterns, Amy felt Brian tug her gently back. At first, she thought he was scared. Then she saw him drop to one knee. For a moment, the world around her froze. Ghosts, chains, actors, screams. Everything faded into silence. "Amy, I know we both said we'd never do this again," Brian said, his voice shaking just enough to betray the weight of the moment. He held out a ring, dark silver, decorated with two tiny skulls, perfectly twisted and beautifully strange, just like their love story. "But my love for you is insane. Will you marry me?" Tammy gasped. Misty froze. Even the haunted house actors, unsure whether to keep performing, stood back in awe. Amy didn't hesitate. Not for a second. Not after everything they had been through. "You know I will," she breathed. And there it was, her yes, echoing through a hallway designed for scares but suddenly filled with something unexpectedly tender. Soon after, The couple celebrated their engagement in the most Amy and Brian way possible by buying a pet snake, a tiny, squirming creature they named Baby, who quickly became their unusual little symbol of new beginnings. But even in their joy, the world outside had opinions. Too soon. He's not good for her. She's rushing again. What about the kids? Amy heard it all, but for once, she didn't let the noise drown her out. She had learned the hard way that life doesn't always give you second chances. When love shows up, messy, imperfect, but real, you don't push it away out of fear. Her confidence grew as she watched Brian interact with her sons. He didn't try to replace Michael. He didn't try to force affection. Instead, he sank into their lives with quiet steps, small gestures, and patient kindness, playing games with them on the living room floor, listening to their stories, giving them space when they needed it. Both boys warmed up to him in their own ways, and soon, Amy no longer felt like she was standing alone in the world. She had someone beside her, not to save her, but to walk with her. The news of their engagement spread quickly online, igniting a wildfire of reactions. Some celebrated her happiness. Some rolled their eyes. Some questioned her choices as a mother. But Amy didn't care. Not this time. She had spent years living for everyone else's expectations, her family's, the viewers, the critics. Now she was choosing joy for herself. And as Halloween drew closer, Amy began dreaming of something bold, dark, dramatic, and unapologetically her, a wedding that would be remembered forever. A wedding that reflected her spirit and her strength. A wedding held in a place rumored to be haunted. A wedding where she would finally get her happily ever after. As September 2025 drew to a close, Amy Slaton was consumed by preparations for her Halloween wedding. Most people would have chosen a bright, sunlit ceremony in a garden or a classic church affair, but Amy wanted something different, something that spoke to her personality, a touch of mystery, a hint of the unconventional, and an overwhelming sense of intimacy with her new family. The venue, Cuckey's Talbot, was a historic mansion in Bardstown, known for its dark, Gothic architecture and ghostly reputation. Some considered it eerie, but to Amy, it was perfect. Its towering spires, candlelit halls, and shadowy corners mirrored the intensity of her life, the struggles she had endured, the battles she had fought, and the new hope that had emerged in the darkness. Amy worked meticulously on every detail. She wanted a wedding that reflected her personality while embracing the role of a mother and partner. The dress was a sleeveless lace gown with an elegant veil and a black tiara, a nod to her Gothic inspiration, yet romantic and timeless. Her deep pink hair, dyed at Brian's playful request, added a modern, bold touch to the classic silhouette. Brian, on the other hand, looked dashing in a traditional tuxedo with tails and a black bow tie, standing beside her as a steadfast partner who had earned his place in her family. Amy's sons, Gage Dion, 4, and Glenn Allen, 3, were central to the celebration. They weren't just participants. They were part of her story. The boys wore miniature tuxedos, each tailored to perfection, and ran gleefully through the mansion's halls between ceremony rehearsals, their laughter echoing off the walls. Tammy Slaton, ever the supportive sister, was by Amy's side, helping her navigate the stress of last-minute arrangements. The maid of honor, Alicia Laley Davis, exuded grace and excitement, a comforting presence amidst the whirlwind of planning. Amy marveled at how the small gathering of family and close friends brought together love, laughter, and a hint of nostalgia for the days when life had seemed simpler, yet she realized how much she had grown. Every corner of the mansion reflected Amy's attention to detail. Candles flickered in wrought iron holders, casting soft shadows on the walls. Gothic floral arrangements in deep reds, purples, and blacks adorned the tables. A delicate blend of eerie charm and elegance permeated the space, creating a setting that was dramatic without being overwhelming. Even the choice of music balanced her love for romance with her playful, spirited personality. The ceremony itself was intimate. Amy walked down a dimly lit aisle, the soft glow of candles reflecting in her veil. Brian waited at the altar, a mix of nerves and joy in his eyes, as he witnessed Amy's presence fill the room with an almost tangible energy. The officiant, a friend who understood the couple's unique journey, spoke words that captured not just a union of two people, but the merging of families, hearts, and histories. When the moment came to exchange vows, Amy and Brian's words were sincere and raw. They didn't speak of perfection because life wasn't perfect. They spoke of patience, growth, understanding, and unwavering commitment. Amy promised to continue protecting, nurturing, and loving not only her sons but also the new family they were building together. Brian vowed to support her dreams, respect her journey, and share life's challenges and joys equally. Gage and Glenn giggled as they placed the rings on the couple's fingers, and Amy felt a surge of gratitude. She had faced public scrutiny, custody battles, personal hardships, and yet here she was, stepping into a new chapter with courage and love. The reception was a lively blend of celebration and personal touches. Guests danced under chandeliers, toasted with sparkling cider, and shared stories of resilience and hope. Amy laughed freely, her heart lighter than it had been in years. Her sons twirled in their tuxedos, Brian lifted her in a dance, and for a few precious hours, life felt both magical and grounded. Beyond the celebration, Amy reflected on the symbolism of her wedding. It wasn't just about love, it was about survival, growth, and the power of embracing life unapologetically. Every choice she made, from her hair to the venue, the vows, and the inclusion of her children, was a statement that she was in control of her story now. As the night drew to a close, Amy stood on the balcony, looking out at the shadowed grounds of Cuckey's Talbot. Brian joined her quietly, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. She felt warmth, safety, and a profound sense of accomplishment. The chaos of her past, the arrests, the custody threats, the public judgment, had not defeated her. It had shaped her. And now, with her new husband, her sons, and her newfound sense of empowerment, Amy was ready to embrace the next chapter. Life would still have its trials, but she had learned to navigate them with grace, strength, and love. The weeks following Amy Slaton's Halloween wedding were a whirlwind of adjustment, celebration, and reflection. Marriage had brought a new rhythm to her life, one that intertwined love, responsibility, and the ever-present demands of motherhood. Amy was no longer just a reality star navigating cameras and critics. She was a wife, a mother, and a woman determined to carve out stability and joy amidst the chaos. Morning routines became her anchor. Gage and Glenn woke early, as children do, and Amy rose with them, preparing breakfast and packing snacks for little adventures. Tennis lessons, once a casual activity, now became part of a structured schedule. Amy watched her sons learn to balance, swing, and laugh in the sun, their giggles echoing in the yard. Each session was more than exercise. It was a bonding ritual, a way for Amy to instill healthy habits while showing her children that life could be both fun and disciplined. Brian was present in ways that both surprised and comforted her. He helped with morning routines, cheered during the boys' games, and seamlessly integrated into family life. Amy marveled at how effortlessly he embraced her sons, how naturally he adapted to the chaos of a house with energetic young boys. Their connection deepened as they navigated parenthood together, each learning to support the other without losing sight of their individual needs. Yet, fame never slept. Cameras and social media were constant companions, capturing moments both tender and tumultuous. Amy shared glimpses of daily life on Instagram, from breakfast with her boys to playful tennis matches, each post carrying a message of perseverance and love. Her followers admired her dedication, leaving comments of encouragement and admiration. One user, Samuel_Gadwin, wrote, "Continue being a good mom. Seek help when you need it." Amy smiled at messages like these. They were reminders that while the world watched, her heart was firmly rooted in her children's well-being. But challenges lingered. The shadow of past arrests and custody controversies still followed her. Critics questioned her decisions, from trusting Brian so soon to balancing public life with private responsibilities. Amy felt the sting of judgment, but refused to let it define her. Every choice she made, from the Halloween wedding to tennis with her boys, was motivated by love and the desire to create a stable, nurturing environment. Family dynamics added another layer of complexity. Tammy remained a constant support, though not without her own opinions. Amanda's temporary custody of Gage and Glenn during Amy's detainment had caused friction, and Amy navigated delicate conversations with care. She sought harmony but recognized that she could not control every perspective. What mattered most was the happiness and security of her sons. Amid these pressures, Amy found moments of profound joy. Mother's Day was a highlight. A quiet breakfast with Gage and Glenn, their favorite ham and cheese sandwiches shared with laughter and sticky fingers. Amy captured the moment for Instagram, not for fame, but as a personal keepsake. The warmth of her son's smiles reminded her of why she had fought so hard, endured public scrutiny, and worked tirelessly on her personal growth. Brian also played a significant role in supporting Amy's journey. He shared stories of his own childhood, encouraged educational games, and participated in family outings. Their love story, once questioned by skeptics, had become a testament to commitment, understanding, and the blending of two families into a cohesive unit. Amy's public acknowledgement of their bond, including the playful quirks like naming their pet snake Baby, reinforced the sense that life could be joyful even after hardship. Through it all, Amy remained focused on personal development. She continued her weight loss journey, not merely for appearances, but as a reflection of her determination to improve her health and set a positive example for her children. Her choices were deliberate, designed to demonstrate resilience, discipline, and the ability to rise above adversity. Social media reactions were mixed, but Amy's confidence grew. She posted about tennis practice, shared updates about family life, and engaged with fans authentically. Criticism still existed, but it no longer held power over her. Her narrative was no longer controlled by doubt. It was written by her actions, her love, and her perseverance. As autumn deepened, Amy reflected on the juxtaposition of her public and private life. Cameras captured celebrations, arguments, and milestones, but away from the spotlight, her days were filled with mundane yet meaningful routines. Bath time with Gage and Glenn, grocery trips, homework assistance, and bedtime stories became sacred rituals. These moments grounded her, reminding her that despite fame and controversy, her primary role remained clear: mother and protector. Looking ahead, Amy recognized that the path was ongoing. Custody challenges might resurface, public scrutiny would continue, and life would remain unpredictable. Yet, armed with love, resilience, and a supportive partner, she felt prepared. The Halloween wedding, tennis lessons, and quiet breakfasts with her sons were not just events. They were building blocks for a stable, happy future. Brian's presence offered reassurance that she was not alone in navigating this journey. Together, they faced the complexities of blending families, managing public perception, and nurturing young children. Amy's story was evolving from survival to thriving, each day adding new chapters of love, joy, and growth. And through it all, Gage and Glenn remained the heartbeat of her world. Their laughter, curiosity, and affection reminded Amy of the stakes, the purpose, and the immense rewards of motherhood. She had endured criticism, legal battles, and personal challenges, but in their smiles, she found strength, validation, and a reason to keep moving forward. The post-wedding months had taught Amy that life was a delicate balance of resilience and tenderness. Every setback was a lesson, every triumph a testament to her dedication. Fame could observe, critics could comment, but the essence of her life, her marriage, her children, her personal growth, was hers to cultivate. In this new chapter, Amy Slaton was no longer just a reality star under scrutiny. She was a wife, a mother, and a woman who had reclaimed her narrative, demonstrating to the world that love, commitment, and perseverance could shape a life worth celebrating. As winter approached, the spotlight on Amy Slaton only intensified. Cameras followed her every move, from grocery store runs with Gage and Glenn to casual walks with Brian and the boys in the neighborhood park. Every post, every smile, Every minor misstep became fodder for commentary online. Yet Amy had grown more resilient. She learned to filter criticism, embrace constructive advice, and ignore the naysayers whose voices carried little substance. Instagram became a platform of empowerment rather than judgment. Amy shared videos of family game nights, snippets of tennis practice, and candid moments of her son's learning new skills. One clip, in particular, went viral. Gage successfully serving his first tennis ball over the net, his small arms trembling with pride, while Glenn cheered from the sidelines, waving his mini racket enthusiastically. Fans flooded the comment section with encouragement, praising Amy for actively engaging her children in healthy, constructive activities. Brian played a central role in helping Amy manage both the public and private aspects of her life. He coordinated schedules, helped with household responsibilities, and supported her mental health. The couple started attending parenting workshops together, learning strategies to strengthen their blended family. For Amy, this was a revelation. She realized that growth wasn't just about physical transformation or fame. It was also about emotional intelligence, patience, and effective communication. Yet, the past was never far behind. Questions about Michael Halterman occasionally resurfaced in tabloids and social media posts. Critics speculated whether Amy's sons were receiving consistent fatherly guidance, despite the fact that Michael had visitation rights. Amy addressed these concerns with grace, emphasizing that her son's well-being was her priority. "I want Gage and Glenn to have love and support from all the people in their lives," she posted, her tone firm yet maternal. "And I'm committed to making sure they are safe, happy, and growing in the best environment possible." Family support remained a complex web. Tammy continued to be a guiding figure, though she sometimes clashed with Amy over parenting decisions. Amanda, who had briefly held custody of the boys during Amy's detainment, offered counsel with caution, mindful of boundaries. Through it all, Amy learned to navigate these relationships diplomatically, prioritizing harmony for her children over personal grievances. Amy's personal growth extended beyond parenting. She became an advocate for wellness, sharing her journey of weight loss, mental health, and resilience. Fans resonated with her authenticity. She posted about challenges, struggles with anxiety, moments of fatigue, and the difficulty of balancing fame with motherhood, but also celebrated achievements. Each post was a testament to her determination to lead by example, showing her sons that perseverance and self-care were integral to a meaningful life. Public appearances were another avenue for influence. Amy appeared on podcasts, virtual panels, and lifestyle interviews, speaking candidly about her life choices, her marriage to Brian, and the lessons learned from past hardships. She addressed criticism openly, but without defensiveness, modeling transparency and accountability. Her sincerity garnered respect, turning some skeptics into supporters who admired her ability to transform personal challenges into teaching moments for her children and her audience. Amid the scrutiny, Amy and Brian cultivated private traditions with Gage and Glenn. Weekend hikes, evening story time, and baking sessions became cherished rituals. These quiet moments reinforced family bonds, offering a counterbalance to the public eye that constantly observed their lives. Amy embraced the idea that happiness was not only performative for social media, it was lived, quietly and fully, in everyday acts of care. The reality of blended family dynamics presented occasional hurdles. Gage and Glenn sometimes struggled with the concept of a new parental figure, expressing confusion or jealousy. Amy approached these challenges with patience, incorporating Brian into routines gradually and respectfully. Over time, the boys' trust and affection for him deepened, and Amy observed with relief as their family cohesion strengthened. Amid these personal victories, Amy remained mindful of her physical and mental health. Tennis practice evolved into a family activity that doubled as a form of exercise and stress relief. Amy shared these routines with her followers, often emphasizing that fitness was as much about mental well-being as physical appearance. Her posts about mindfulness, nutrition, and active parenting inspired fans to engage in healthier lifestyles with their own children. The public narrative, however, remained unpredictable. Headlines occasionally revisited past controversies, the camel bite incident, arrests, and custody battles, but Amy no longer allowed them to dictate her mood or choices. Instead, she used her platform to educate, to provide honest reflections on her journey, and to highlight the lessons learned from mistakes. For Amy, the ongoing challenge was maintaining equilibrium, balancing career, motherhood, marriage, and public scrutiny without sacrificing personal happiness. She developed a structured daily routine that prioritized family time, self-care, and professional responsibilities. Morning tennis, afternoon creative play, evening reading, and nightly reflection became the framework that anchored her life. Through it all, love remained the driving force. Brian's unwavering support, Gage and Glenn's laughter, and even the occasional disagreements among family members reinforced the notion that relationships were dynamic, evolving, and worth nurturing. Amy's Instagram updates, whether a simple photo of Gage and Glenn playing or a reflective caption about resilience, communicated this philosophy to her audience, making her story relatable, inspiring, and deeply human. By the close of Part 8, Amy Slaton had transformed from a reality TV figure navigating chaos into a grounded mother, wife, and influencer of wellness. She had learned to navigate scrutiny, embrace personal growth, and maintain the delicate balance of fame and private life. The lessons of resilience, love, and family would guide her as she moved toward an even more empowered chapter, laying the foundation for the final stages of her 20,000-word narrative. As spring arrived, Amy Slaton found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her here, the chaos, the heartbreak, the victories, and the lessons. The past few years had been a whirlwind of personal challenges, public scrutiny, and profound transformations. Yet, as she watched Gage and Glenn run through the backyard, laughter spilling like music, she realized that every trial had shaped her into the mother, wife, and woman she had become. Amy's focus shifted toward long-term goals for her family. Beyond the immediate demands of daily life, she began envisioning the kind of childhood she wanted for her sons, a childhood filled with curiosity, stability, and joy. Tennis lessons were just the beginning. She introduced arts and crafts, nature walks, and science experiments, turning everyday activities into opportunities for learning. Gage learned about colors and textures while painting. Glenn discovered the joy of numbers while stacking blocks. Amy made these moments fun, interactive, and educational, nurturing their minds as much as their bodies. Brian remained a steadfast partner in this vision. He encouraged Amy to pursue personal growth alongside family responsibilities, creating a balance that felt rare and precious. Together, they researched parenting techniques, discussed strategies for blended family dynamics, and explored creative ways to bond as a unit. For Amy, Brian was more than a husband. He was a collaborator in the ongoing project of family life, a trusted ally in both moments of triumph and challenges. Public perception continued to weigh on Amy, but she learned to navigate it with grace. She maintained her social media presence, not for validation, but to share meaningful stories that highlighted resilience, parenting, and love. Her posts shifted from defending her choices to inspiring others, offering practical advice to single parents, blended families, and those navigating public scrutiny. A heartfelt video of Gage and Glenn building a treehouse garnered millions of views, with fans commenting on the joy, patience, and love evident in every interaction. Amy also became an advocate for mental health. She spoke openly about anxiety, the pressures of reality television, and the importance of self-care. Her followers resonated with her honesty. She encouraged parents to seek support, reminding them that asking for help was a strength, not a weakness. Workshops, virtual panels, and interviews gave her a platform to amplify this message, and she embraced the role with humility and authenticity. The relationship with Michael Halterman, though complex, remained respectful and cooperative. Amy prioritized her son's well-being over personal grievances. She coordinated visitation schedules and maintained open lines of communication with him, understanding that a healthy father-son relationship was crucial for Gage and Glenn's development. Fans praised her maturity, recognizing that parenting required compromise and dedication rather than ego or vindication. Amy's own health and wellness journey remained central to her life. Tennis, hiking, yoga, and mindful eating were integrated into the family's routine, creating habits that the boys would carry forward. Amy often filmed short instructional videos for Instagram, demonstrating exercises that parents could do with children. She emphasized that wellness was holistic. Physical activity, mental clarity, and emotional support were all interconnected. The couple's Halloween wedding remained a defining memory, a testament to Amy's resilience and ability to embrace joy even after adversity. The pink hair, black diadem, and Victorian-style updo symbolized individuality and confidence. The ceremony was intimate yet spectacular, blending fantasy with heartfelt emotion. It reminded Amy that personal milestones, when shared with love and authenticity, could inspire others to celebrate their own journeys. Amy's long-term vision extended beyond her immediate family. She aspired to create content that educated, entertained, and inspired families worldwide. Projects ranged from parenting guides to interactive children's activities and lifestyle advice, all rooted in her personal experiences. Her message was clear. Mistakes are not failures. They are opportunities to grow, teach, and love better. Throughout Part 9, it became evident that Amy's legacy was not defined by fame or controversy, but by the love, dedication, and resilience she poured into her family. She embraced challenges as lessons, nurtured her sons with unwavering commitment, and cultivated a home where curiosity, creativity, and care flourished. By the end of the segment, Amy Slaton stood as a figure of empowerment, a mother who overcame adversity, a wife who found partnership, and a public personality who transformed scrutiny into meaningful impact. The final chapter of Amy Slaton's story unfolded like a sunrise after a long, stormy night. The air was crisp with early morning freshness, the backyard alive with birdsong and the laughter of Gage and Glenn as they chased each other around the yard, feet pounding against the grass. Amy watched them with a quiet awe, remembering the tumultuous journey that had brought them to this moment. Arrests, custody battles, heartbreak, public scrutiny, and yet, here they were, whole and thriving. Amy and Brian sat on the porch, sipping coffee and basking in the rare, unhurried calm. The years of turmoil had taught them the value of small, peaceful moments. Brian squeezed her hand, a silent reminder of their shared resilience. "Look at them," he said softly. "Everything we've done, all the challenges, it's for this. They're happy, they're loved, and we're doing right by them." Amy nodded, her eyes glistening. "I never imagined it would be this serene. After everything, to see them laughing and learning it's worth every sleepless night, every fear, every fight." She glanced at her phone, scrolling through messages from fans who had followed her journey since the early days of reality TV. The love and support poured in, comments about parenting, resilience, and the way she handled adversity. Amy smiled, realizing that her story had become more than entertainment. It was inspiration, a testament to the power of love, perseverance, and determination. Gage and Glenn ran to them, holding small handmade gifts, leafy collages they had created for their mother and Brian. Amy hugged them tightly, feeling the warmth of unconditional love. These were the moments that mattered, moments that reminded her why she had fought so hard, why she had refused to let criticism, missteps, or legal battles define her. Later that day, the family gathered for a celebratory tennis session, the sun warm on their backs. Amy watched as the boys tried to mimic her swings, their tiny arms wobbling but determined. Brian cheered them on, laughter mixing with the sounds of bouncing tennis balls and clapping hands. Amy joined in, feeling the joy of living fully in the present. This wasn't just exercise, it was connection, a ritual of growth, play, and love. Amy reflected on her journey with Michael Halterman, the father of her sons. Though their relationship had ended, the respect and collaboration they maintained were crucial. Coordinating co-parenting, ensuring stability for Gage and Glenn, and modeling maturity were part of her daily effort. She had learned that family extends beyond romantic relationships, and that the welfare of her children was the ultimate priority. Her wedding to Brian, once a bold statement of individuality and love, had become a symbol of new beginnings. The Halloween-themed ceremony, the pink hair, the Victorian-style gown, it all spoke to Amy's courage, her refusal to conform, and her commitment to authenticity. Brian's unwavering support reinforced her sense of security, allowing her to thrive as a partner and mother simultaneously. As dusk fell, Amy stood on the porch once more, watching the sky turn shades of violet and gold. The journey had been long, arduous, and sometimes unforgiving, but every challenge had built the foundation for the life she now cherished. Her heart was full, not with the absence of struggle, but with the triumph over it, the proof that love, resilience, and self-belief could overcome even the harshest trials. Amy's social media post later that night captured the essence of her evolution, a simple photograph of her son's tennis rackets leaning against the porch railing, their small shoes beside them, the sunset painting the sky. Her caption read, "Every day is a chance to grow, love, and create memories. Grateful for my boys, my love, and this life we're building together." Comments poured in from fans celebrating her strength, perseverance, and devotion as a mother and wife. In this concluding chapter, Amy Slaton's life exemplified the power of transformation. From a young woman navigating fame, divorce, and public judgment to a mother fiercely committed to her son's happiness and a wife embracing love and partnership, her story was one of resilience, courage, and unwavering dedication. She had faced the world's scrutiny, emerged stronger, and created a life defined not by mistakes, but by intentional choices, love, and growth. As night settled over the Slaton household, the laughter of children gave way to gentle quiet. Amy tucked Gage and Glenn into bed, kissing their foreheads, whispering reminders of love, safety, and hope. She paused in the doorway, reflecting on everything, the past, the present, and the bright horizon ahead. She knew challenges would come again, as they always do, but for the first time, she felt fully equipped to meet them, grounded in love, fortified by experience, and driven by an unshakable belief in her ability to provide, nurture, and inspire. The story of Amy Slaton, her family, and her journey was far from over. But for this moment, in this chapter, she could rest, smile, and celebrate the life she had fought to create, a life of love, resilience, and endless possibility. The end.